Spring is in the air. Hello, 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 everybody. I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and you already know what time it is. It's time for some Final Fantasy XIV Hot Takes. And I am running really low on sleep, so this could be a particularly interesting episode, let's say. I asked you, my community, for your hottest, spiciest takes about Final Fantasy XIV and Dawntrail and just Final Fantasy XIV overall, and you provided. And let's get right on into this. And we have a multi-part one here. Up first, we have at Super Dark Link, who says, "Here's my hot takes. Bear in mind, this is coming from someone who isn't an MMO player, but who played up to Endwalker." Okay. Number 1, Y'shtola is the only character I liked. Hell, even my character held the idiot ball a few times, and it was kinda frustrating. Look. Do some people make some stupid decisions throughout the story of Final Fantasy XIV? Yeah, absolutely. Throwing the eyeballs in some random canyon, in retrospect, probably wasn't the smartest idea in the world, as opposed to just stabbing them. And while at the end of the day, what characters we end up liking is purely down to personal preference and nothing else, I've always thought characters and characterization was one of Final Fantasy XIV's strongest elements. Even in its supposed slow parts, I always thought there were characters that I quite enjoyed having on the screen. Gosetsu, Hien, Fadola, Amarek, Kreisvelga, Shiva, Nanamo, on top of all the Scions, because I personally like all the Scions. And will I tolerate any, and I mean any, slander against my boy Zenos Galvis? Absolutely not. We'll get into him in a little bit though. You know, now that I think about it, maybe it's a hot take of my own, but it's kind of funny looking back on it. While I do really like Y'shtola as a character, her actual story probably is one of the least interesting for me out of all the Scions. Maybe it's because they kind of teased her, like, ultimate fate with her eyes and all that, and it didn't really go anywhere. But look, if it's one thing that I think Final Fantasy XIV consistently gets right, for me at least, I think it's characterization. Sure, Dawntrail's a bit of a hiccup in that for me. I still like Sphene, and I still like Otis. So even in expansions where the story is kind of not up to par for me, I can still find things that I like and appreciate. Next up, we have the second part of this hot take. Playing tank as a new player sucked. Look, playing a tank in an MMORPG will always be a bit of a more intensive experience because, generally speaking, you have more responsibilities, like dictating the pace of the run, and just everything that is associated with being a tank. And especially if you're not familiar with how MMORPGs work and you're still trying to get used to, like, all these different buttons and pressing them, I can understand why a role that is rather important may not be the most enjoyable experience. Funnily enough for me though, all the class aesthetics that I actually really like in this game are all the tanks, so I'm kind of stuck with it. But it's one of the things I've kind of learned over the time that I've played Final Fantasy XIV, is that the more and more I play tank, it's really not that bad actually. And funnily enough, in terms of actual job design, it's one of the roles I actually kind of like still. I kind of fell out of love with DPS in this game. I've never been much of a healer kind of guy myself, but I can still find some fun in the actual tank design. Is it perfect? No, I still think Dark Knight requires a lot of revision and a lot of tender love and care to be in a state where I would really come to appreciate that job, but generally speaking, there's something that I like about each of the tanks. Okay, now for the real spicy ones. Number 3, the Ascians are bad villains. I would have agreed with this if we never got Shadowbringers and Endwalker. Because, like, up to that point, they're just kind of, we're the bad guys, we're in the background doing bad guy things. But then we got to Shadowbringers, and they actually added depth and character to them, and I fell in love with the Ascians, fell in love with Amaran and Elpis and all of that. It's insane what one character, Emmett Selk, can really do for an entire faction like that, and just add so much depth and complexity. And I don't think antagonists necessarily need to have depth or complexity to them. Sometimes I like a bad guy who's just a bad guy. But I don't think the Ascians really, like, hit that mark up to that point in this game, and I think they work as more, while still villainous, understandable and empathetic villains. Like, especially Elidibus, I could not have cared less about that guy until we got to, like, 5.3. And I mean, like, specifically 5.3 for him. Because even throughout, like, 5.1 and 5.2, I didn't particularly care about Elidibus. But it was 5.3 where where everything just changed. I think the Ascians are one of the best examples in this game of Square Enix's ability to just completely change your perspective on something quicker than you think they'd be able to. Next up, number 4, soundtrack was alright. Alright, now this is a war crime. Look, Answers, Dragon Song, Revolutions. Why Revolutions didn't play throughout the actual story still baffles my freaking mind, by the way. It should not have just been in the credits. That song is way too good. The main theme is Shadowbringers. Quite a few of the actual boss fight music. I've always had a penchant for music that has lyrics in it. Generally speaking, if your music has lyrics, I'm going to like it more than if it didn't. Final Fantasy XIV has a lot of music with actual lyrics in it. And while I don't particularly remember most of the zone themes, there's a couple that really stick around for me. Namely Ultima Thule. Like, that one's an earworm for me, and will always be one of my favorite songs, not just in Final Fantasy XIV, but in all of Final Fantasy. I do have a penchant for Final Fantasy XIV music, however, that's a bit more slow and emotional. And I think a lot in, like, recent years, we've gotten a lot more, like, heavy and fast-paced music, and I love that kind of stuff, don't get me wrong, I'm a metal fan at the end of the day. But for me, the songs that really stick out for me, and that truly leave an impression, are the songs like Answers, are the songs like Close in the Distance, like Dragon Song, like Revolutions. Those are the songs that really particularly stick out for me and leave a truly lasting impression. I did have a song like that in Dawntrail myself, but back in Endwalker, sometimes I just AFK in Ultima Thule because the song was so nice to listen to. That entire Vanasse scene had so much more emotion for me because of the music that was playing, completely recontextualizing Answers as a song. Even then, most of the music I've heard in Final Fantasy XIV, I either am solely okay about or I like. There's only really one song that I can think of that I'm, like, not that big of a fan of, and that's Smile in Dawntrail. But, like, that's one song out of how many years? Like, I can let it slide. It's not that big of a deal. So now let's move on to my reason for being this next hot take. We have at Aaron Whitlock 7166 who says, my hot take is I want Zenos back. I miss my Warrior of Light having a really cool rival. Preach. From the front to the back, hands in the air, preach. I want my boy, my morning light, my sun and moon, my lodestar. We need Zenos Yay Galvis back tonight. And yes, I have talked about various theories about how they could possibly bring Zenos back because I like this character a little too much. I just really like the role Zenos had in this game for the longest time, playing as the rival to the Warrior of Light. I didn't actually like him all that much back in Stormblood in 4.0 until the end, but I fell in love with that guy in the patches and also in Shadowbringers. And then I thought his story in Endwalker was absolutely perfection. Granted, I mostly called it as well before Endwalker even came out, and I'm still gonna, like, ride that. The coattails of my success, not like Zenos. But look, I'm just gonna be honest, the character's a ton of fun for me. I think a lot of the time when it comes to writing, a lot of time when it comes to, like, discussion about writing and games and stories and all that, we can focus too much on, like, what makes narrative sense, or what makes the most thematic sense and all that. And, like, is that stuff important? Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes it's okay to just have fun with it. I personally like it when the Warrior of Light has a more active role in the story, and I think having a cool rival or someone to bounce off of, not like that, in the story can go a long way for a character like the Warrior of Light. I don't think it's a requirement or anything like that, but it's a ton of fun. Now, granted, like last week I think we talked about how Final Fantasy XIV has a penchant for bringing people back from the dead or like saving people from like an obvious death a bit too much, which takes away some stakes, and like now I'm arguing Zenos should come back, but look, I can have my own personal biases that make no actual sense. I'm allowed to be a bit of a hypocrite on this one specific issue. It's all I ask. Let a man dream. Kill off like Wukla Mod or like Kona or like someone else. Just like save my boy. Okay, let's like be a little bit more serious here if I can. Again, lack of sleep may make me a little bit goofy here. I'm in the position when it comes to Zenos where I'm fine either way. I loved his conclusion. I loved his finale. If he never comes back and he is truly dead, I love his story. I'm glad we got a successful, fulfilling conclusion to that narrative for me at least. I'm perfectly happy if the book never opens. If they bring him back, though, he is easily a character that sparks some of the most enjoyment, some of the most hype out of me when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, so I would still be excited. I'm in like a win-win position either way here. The only like big con is if like they bring him back and they give him like bunny ears or like cat ears and they just completely like character assassinate him. Well, I don't know, maybe some people would like that. Oh god, could you imagine them bringing him back and they like swap his job to Pictomancer? Oh Christ, wait, no, hold on, don't put that evil on me. No, 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 this is not what I wanted. No, like a monkey's paw situation. Oh Christ, oh no. Our final hot take of the day belongs to @Nebula8851, who says, now here's a hot take worthy of discussion. Alright, what you got? If you actually pay attention to a lot of easily missable details and have any familiarity with anime tropes, then the story as a whole noticeably improves in quality. Dawntrail's biggest mistake was not explicitly spelling some things out, because the average player has chronic TikTok brain rot and can't pay attention. Look, while I also am of the opinion that I think media literacy has kind of gone down the crapper lately, I don't think that's the case when it comes to Dawntrail. For me, I do not care fundamentally how well constructed a story is, or how much sense, like plot beat to plot beat, it actually is, or even in terms of character motivations. I care about if it's engaging and enjoyable, because those to me are the two most important critical aspects to a video game story and narrative. If I'm not enjoying it, I don't care if it's well written or anything like that. I don't care if the story actually makes sense. If I'm not enjoying it, that's the biggest issue for me. And while there are parts of Dawntrail that I do enjoy, namely the stuff with Solution 9, even then there are things that I'm not a big fan of. There's a lot of focus in this story on things I fundamentally could not care less about. Do I care about how these people farm? No. Do I care about this, like, float thing with the bird people? No. Do I care about taming an alpaca and having the other character do it off-screen? No. I thought quite a bit with the Yakoi was actually kind of interesting, but then I think Valagamonda's largely mishandled. Not enough is shown, while too much is told to the player. And this is a fundamental pillar of storytelling that I'll most of the time subscribe to. I don't think it's always applicable. Sometimes you should tell things, because you can get a different effect by doing so, but more often than not, I think a story is better when things are shown instead of just simply told and regurgitated to you. And I don't mind some anime tropes, right? And especially when I'm watching anime, I can suspend my disbelief in terms of like internal logic of what's going on, because I just chalk it up to like, oh, it's anime. And while Final Fantasy XIV has always had tropes, don't get me wrong here on this, I think Dawntrail, like, turned the dial up a bit too much in the wrong direction in regards to quite a few of them, to the active detriment of my enjoyment for the overall thing. I've talked about it before, but I think an easy way to just reconfigure the whole first half of the story is remove the whole Starburst gimmick thing. I thought that was really stupid, and instead have a more broad goal of just finding the City of Gold. And we follow various rumors and just tiny strands of information to go from different points in the region, just trying to piece all the clues together. The problem with the structure of Dawntrail for me is that it tried to build the world for the sake of building the world, instead of having that world building be a natural consequence of plot progression, for an interesting plot that I actually cared about. I never cared about the 7 starbursts we had to collect, and the actual activities we had to perform in order to collect those starbursts were rather dull for me. No, I did not care about learning Jabruk Pibil, or learning about how to tame an alpaca for just to be done off-screen, or why the bird people have a float. I don't care. I cared about the City of Gold. I like world building when it happens as a natural consequence of plot progression, and in an interesting way that furthers the plot. I don't care about just like taking our time out of the story, having the pace like grind to a halt, and then building up the world because we just want to have this part of the world built up. World building simply for the sake of world building, without interesting things actually happening to me, I find rather dull. It's funnily enough why I kind of like the Solution 9 stuff more, because we at least had that narrative thread of us going after Zeralja because we're trying to save Tuliolol, which explained why we started to learn more about Alexandria. Again, was it handled the best? No, but it's like one of the reasons why I like the second half of Dawntrail way more than the first half. And with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with your own hot takes about Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. And also, if you want to, specifically about 7.2 and what you feel about it. Seeing now that we've had both live letters and 7.2 is almost upon us. Love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives, and to hear your hot takes so that I may react to them in a future video. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can, and I'll see you all next time. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.